Hello, Mike here, the Process Nerd, and today we're going to do something a little bit off the beaten track. For the last 18 months or so, I've been using transcripts and things through AI to assist in process analysis, process discovery. Usually, these transcripts have come off the likes of, discovery calls and things I've had with people to try to understand how their business works. But I thought today I'd show you one of the techniques that I've used to try to get eyes on a process relatively quickly and at least increase my understanding. I'm not saying necessarily to use this technique in workshops with people, but it can if you're looking to increase your knowledge in terms of how a process operates, so you can go in knowing something. Maybe you can then use it for examples and things like that. Then you can use this technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that, and we're going to model a process. We're going to talk through that. We're going to be using YouTube, ChatGPT, and Liberty Spark to model. And then depending on our progress, I do have another meeting at 11, so we'll have to jump off for that. We'll see how we go. But basically, I'm going to be using some of these techniques as well. I've currently got a customer that's in the manufacturing space who I'm building an ERP system for. And we can talk through some of that as well, because this is going to be a manufacturing process that we look at today. So, yes, very exciting. So I'm going to share my screen here and then we'll jump in. There's going to be some other tools and resources too that I mentioned along the way that I'll try to get you up to speed with in how they work. So here we go. I'm going to share screen. Not that one. This one. There we go. So I've created a thing here. We're going to look at how a train is made. I find high-speed rail particularly interesting. So, it's a joy to actually travel by if you ever get the opportunity. Don't take the plane or don't drive. Take the train. It's a lot of fun. You can watch the countryside go by. So I have a video here. It's how the bullet trains in Japan are made. And usually when you're in YouTube, you are able to go down to find the transcript. And down here, there's a button, show transcript. It's usually below the description and the chapters. So you click that, it comes back up here and you can see the transcript. Now, there's different languages if they're configured that way. What we want to be able to do is we come up here and we want to toggle the timestamps off. And then we want to copy this. And then we want to head into ChatGPT. And we're going to have a new one. And this is the first time I'm going to use the reasoning model, the O3. Let's just go with the mini. Don't need the really bulky stuff right now. So I'm going to say I'm discovering a process. Give me the overarching stages of manufacturing of trains from this transcript. I'm going to paste it in there. I'm going to see what it comes up with. Okay. Interesting. So this looks like it's a quality or a maintenance process. So we have arrival initial inspection. So the train enters the facility and undergoes a diagnostic to determine its maintenance needs. Okay. Disassembly and dismantling. The train is split into individual sections. Carriages are stripped down. Key components such as seats, body panels, and undercarriage parts are removed. Okay, so that's good. Component-specific maintenance. So each section is sent to designated areas for detailed work. And then we have cleaning, polishing, painting, reassembly and final assembly, and then final testing and QA. So it's pretty straightforward from a process perspective. Now, when we look at processes, I tend to break them down in terms of level of detail, right? So you have some very overarching type of things. You could even probably round it up again into what some of these might be, but this is a fairly high level. And what we want to be able to do is we want to then break this down into an activity level to go down into further detail. So what we're going to do is we're going to create 6 stages on our process model, and then we're going to ask ChatGPT again to break each one of these down into further detail so that we can get down to hopefully an activity level. Now, activity level is probably not mentioned in this video, right? We're not talking about handoffs between individual people or roles. That's fine. But the purpose for this activity is just to understand more about this process. So maybe what we can do is we can ask ChatGPT to start to give us some examples, right? So we can use it as a research tool in that sense. Cool. All right. So let's start to do that. So we've got arrival and initial inspection. So we have this is the main stage. Now, usually on these, I like to have in my boxes the verb noun format. We're just going to keep this output here for now. We're not going to go through too much of that right now. But usually I like to have, just going to move this across here so I can just switch between. Usually have the activities as verb noun because you're doing something. And then we can move on through. So I tend to watch a lot of YouTube in terms of just understanding how things work. I think it's a wonderful way of learning. It's really great for the kids as well. You're talking about something, and they'll inevitably ask the question, "Oh, so how does that work?" And you're able to show them really quickly, which is great. So I'm going to bring these up here, and then I'm going to do some spacing. So if we can arrange and we can distribute horizontally, and then we can arrange and we can align top. Great. So now we have each of these. So now what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll create a detailed view. Cool. More coffee. So arrival initial inspection. So, and I'm going to do this one section at a time. So what I found is the outputs for ChatGPT, even in the reasoning models, but not so much, probably more in 4.0, is it gives you limited output based on what you're. So if you ask too much, it's not going to give you what you really asked for. So what we're going to do here is we're going to break it down and we're going to do 6 different prompts for each of the sections. So please explain further on in more detail the process of arrival and initial inspection. Can you please give the list of steps in a table as activity along with the person or role that performs that activity. Then any additional notes on that step that may be useful to understanding the process. Amazing. How good is that? So now we have this. So we can bring this into this new model. So we have train arrival. Again, I'm not going to bother right now with the intricate details of process modeling. I'm just interested right now in getting the details on the page. Now, if you're modeling in an organization, you're likely or will hopefully have a modeling standard. So when you do this and you want the output to actually be used in some way for that, then you'll need to make sure that you comply with the modeling standard. So one of those being, verb noun format for your task names. You might have other information that you need to put on there. You might be using different shapes. If you're using BPMN, you might have a certain number of shapes that you use for different things. So here we're just going to go with, we have a team, which is cool. And then we've got the operator. So person / role, signaling the start of the, yeah, okay. Comprehensive check is conducted to assess the train's condition. Okay, great. So these are some of the inputs and outputs. And what we might be able to do now is also prompt it to do a SIPOC for us. So a SIPOC is basically suppliers, inputs, process, output, customers. It gives the breakdown of the steps of a process and then who's supplying what information, who's getting the information that's output from those processes and activities. It's really, really helpful to understand how things flow. It's sometimes not always evident on the process model itself. And it's sort of so what we'll do is we'll get it to prompt now. Can you create this in a SIPOC table? Suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, customers. Along with the person / role and additional notes that don't go into these other columns. Because this is essentially what we're doing with this model, right? Is we have an input, and then we have this is an output, and then we have this is an input, and which is an output, which is an input to this one. So that's what a process is, right? It's just a series of inputs and outputs that we just want to understand how they work. Cool. Look at that. Isn't that great? So yeah, usually, you can do this in the form of on a process model. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show you how I do this in BPMN because it's a little bit easier just to demonstrate this information. .io. So if you've got a process, we'll use some pools here. We'll bring this up, bring this down, and then we'll have another pool here, which is collapsed. And then copy, paste, put that one down here. So this is suppliers, and this is customers. And then we have our inputs, which is this, and then our outputs, which is that. So we can sort of construct this that's in the form of a model, not in the form of a table, if it helps people understand, right? So I've done this before. I've also just done this in a simple Excel file. I'll see if I can open that up for you, along with all the other things I have open at the moment. Excel. So we have here a table. And we can throw that in here. So you can sort of see that there. Now that's really interesting, isn't it? That's a table with only three stages, not the other 1, 2, 3. I thought that this had 4. Are they counting the train arrival as an input? No, process. Visual Studio diagnostic. Routing pre-maintenance area. Maintenance planners. Maintenance planners. Interesting. Oh, they're considering the receiving of that for the disassembly team to be the end of it. So something we need to think about as well. So you can see here we have the train operator as a party to this. Oh, what's happened here? Oh, that's a bit weird. Having a small technical difficulty there. Okay, we are back. So we've got the train operator, we've got the process train arrival. Okay, so the supplier to that is the train operator who's actually doing it. This person's receiving it. Let's just call it this. Sounds better, doesn't it? The train arrival. Going to create that. We're going to go this, and we're going to be dealing with the train operator. Is that what we called it? Train operator. Going to create that. And we have the train. And then we have what are the outputs Train is inside the facility. We have detailed diagnostic report out of the next stage. Yeah, so you can see how this starts to flow together. Train position, prepared for disassembly. Down here we have the inspection technicians. We have the operations manager. We have, that's it. And then disassembly will happen with the next team. Great. So now we have that. Now, there may be some other people in here that we need to include. So maintenance scheduling, inspection report from initial step. So we've got the diagnostics here. We might have some other documents and things. So what we can do is we can add those on here. So I usually go with a custom field here, document. We're going to call it the train diagnostic report. And we're going to confirm that and we're going to show it. So now we have a document. Now, the thing that we've not included on here is the systems that they're using. Now, I'm not actually sure. Maybe we can just query it here. Are there any technology platforms mentioned in the transcript? If so, can you add them to the table in a system column? It's noticed that Squarespace was the sponsor of the video. That's hilarious. Here we go. So we have this. Now, it's really interesting here that, it's given me 2 responses. So in my custom instructions, I get it to number the response so we can go back and refer to it. But it looks like that it's given me this with its markup, but then it's given me the response again with the actual table. I find that really quite interesting. I'm not sure what the helpfulness in that is. Like, is it just explaining what what the reasoning is here? I'm not sure. Very, very odd. System, scheduling system, diagnostic tool software. Now, I would say that for, an operation that, that deals with trains, that they would have like a dedicated ERP system that they try to manage this in. Surely they do. Maybe I'm just making a bad assumption. I have seen worse. So there's none mentioned here. It's sort of just given me some very general names here. So we're not going to worry about that right now. But on here, we can just add a system if there's one used, right? So if there's a specific system they use, then we can do that. Cool. So the pre-disassembly separation is, so we need some more information. Can you include the line for, or a row? I should say row, shouldn't I? The row for this one. So it's giving me that again. Okay, so we have this, we have the disassembly team, maintenance staff. So I'm just going to put in here a maintenance officer, something like that. So as an output to this, we also now have our carriage sections. So what this has done, and this is something important to think about as well, is we have a one process here that executes, and now we're going to split this out now into four, well, n number, because it's not always guaranteed that it'll be four carriage sections. And you're going to have a different process now run to complete this entire process for the carriage sections. So we have to keep this in mind, right? When we're dealing with building of systems, that you will have processes handle multiple instances of certain things. So I'll give you an example of that. So I'm building an ERP system for a manufacturer, and we have a purchase order, and that purchase order is refers out to the parts master table. And when the parts are received in, we convert those parts to items, right? That are now individually kept on the shelf. So we are going from managing a purchase order and managing parts to managing individual items. So if I order 16 of a part, I'm going to end up with 16 individual items now. And those individual items are going to be used in different other processes. So at different stages. So the thing you need to think about is how many other instances of this are going to be executed. If I'm dealing with an end-to-end process, is this process now finishing here now that we've dealt with the individual train? Or are we now going out and doing another process for the carriage sections? So you can think about that. Don't overthink it, but it's just something to think about as we go through, because you don't want to assume that you're only going to be doing it for one carriage section. That means that in the next process that we handle, when we're looking at the carriage sections, we're going to have to make sure that we, notate down that this can happen multiple times for the same train, right? So, yeah, just something to think about as we go along. Cool. So we have our carriage sections. We've got the different things here. We've got the operations manager. We've got the maintenance officer. We've got some other information here. So we're going to go ahead and do this for the other sections now. So I'm going to come up here. And I'm going to, let's just test it. I really just want to give this model a run for its money. Now, please do the same with the same information types for the rest of the process. See what it comes up with. And by the way, you can do this for pretty much any process. It doesn't have to be for manufacturing. You could look up a video on, how a service organization works. It doesn't have to be for dealing with individual physical parts or anything like that. So we have now this. Interesting. So what's it done? It's for the remaining stages of the process, we have the pre-disassembly, disassembled components, service train body. It's not giving me the full table. Oh no, it has, because I asked it to break down further. Okay, so let's back that out a little bit. Let's stop there for that line of thinking. Can you break down each individual stage into more detailed process steps, like we did for the first stage? Then I would like to get the SIPOC for those detailed steps. Okay. Excellent. Look at that. It's even broken it down into different tables. Wonderful. How good is that? 3, 4, 5. It's called insurance. It is. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, so let's have a look at what the detailed steps are for disassembly. So we'll save this. We'll head back out into manufacture train. And we're going to have just create a detailed view here for disassembly and dismantling. Get rid of these because we don't need those anymore. And then we're going to create these different steps here. Now, if any of the Liberty Spark guys watch this, I would love to be able to import a spreadsheet into individual steps. If that is possible, I would love that. Right, so we'll get rid of that. We'll go. What's that? Activity. So how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Now that's interesting. Is it 6 for each one? It is. Isn't that interesting? Why 6? No, that one's got 7. That one's got 5. Okay. Oh, I was just interested because sometimes it does that. Just. So yeah, we're going to pull this out now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start left or start right, and then oops, no, and then start left. What have I done? Let's just figure this out. My windows have all gone now. That's what I get for trying to be clever. All right. Present. Share screen. Share screen. There we go. All right. So we have verification. We have removal. We have removal. One, 4, 5, 6. Yep. 4, removal, undercarriage, components, inventory documentation, labeling, and then transport to dismantling warehouse. There you go. Interesting. Really, really interesting. So when you look at this, we're starting to think about, right, like what do we need for this operation to be successful? Storage is obviously a big part of that with warehousing. What goes into a warehouse? How big are the parts? What types of shelving and equipment are needed? All of that sort of stuff. When it's transported to the warehouse, we have to think about those things, right? So, particularly if it's a new process. If it's a new process and that infrastructure doesn't exist, then we really need to think about how much it's going to cost to set that up. So, this is an example of, especially when we're dealing with new processes, we're not just talking about, throughput and all that sort of stuff. It's how do we actually make this a reality? And if we're going to do that, the business case and the project is going to have to include, the cost of setting all of this stuff up and the time that it takes to set that stuff up so the process can run properly. There's going to be, for managing a warehouse, there's an entirely different set of requirements and a set of things that will go into building that system. So definitely something we need to think about there once we get into the inventory management part. So we'll come back to that. We'll get these other processes out and then we'll come back. So we've got the component specific maintenance. So we'll save that. We'll go out here. We'll get this detailed view. And then we've got inspection of individual components. So again, right, they've broken it down. Okay, there's different. It's a hierarchy, right? We've got the train. It's been broken down into carriages. Now the carriages have been broken down into components, right? So each of the components now is going to have an assessment against it, right? So we're not just doing an assessment against the carriage itself. We're actually doing an assessment, and there's going to be a rating for each of the different components. So when we think about how we're going to set up a data structure for a system to manage this type of thing, all of these sorts of things will be their own individual tables that we need to think about. We're going to have components associated with carriages associated with trains. So, really important that we sort of try to figure that out. If you're just a process analyst who's, wants to just focus on the things to be done, that's fine. But I'll tell you right now that your capability is going to be limited, because if you can't actively participate in how the system is going to be set up, all you're going to be is just a glorified process modeler. And to me that doesn't sound that fun, but we really want to make, the reason why we do this is because we want to make tangible real world adjustments, not just talk about theoretical process changes on a page. verification documentation, and then return to storage. Okay, so they're talking about individual components. They're going to inspect them. They're testing them. They're repairing or replacing them. Okay, so here, there has to be some sort of outcome about whether or not, like, is it repaired or replaced? Now here, there's actually going to be a separate output, because if it's what if it's not repaired? What if we have to replace it? There's a separate process then that we have to go out and go, okay, well, for a replacement part, what does procurement look like for that? Right? It's not a matter of going, well, it's a new part or whatever. Your replacement parts may be treated differently to other parts within your procurement process. So, now we're talking about downstream impact and cross-stream impact between different other processes of different areas. Here we're talking about the make function, not the source function necessarily, but now we're bleeding into those other areas. Okay, so this would prompt me to set up a meeting with procurement around understanding when this replacement part needs to be done, or maybe we even need to source a special repairer. Maybe it's not something they do in-house. How do they manage their supplies in that space? How do they sign out work? All of that sort of stuff. That would be a prompt for me to go out and start to ask questions. Return to storage. Okay, so we've got cleaning, preparation. So here we're talking about stages of components. So my computer's just done it again. Black screen. That tells me that there probably needs to be some sort of status for the component around whether it's been cleaned and prepared. Is it cleaned? Yes or no? Is it prepared? Yes or no? Or are they stages of in progress cleaning, in progress preparation? Is it verified? Perform a final check and update maintenance records for each component, right? So there's a verification status. So we're dealing with lots of statuses now. So when we're dealing with a table, let me open my Excel again. When we're dealing with a database, you're going to have a component, right? And it's going to have, name. We're going to have a verified status. We're going to have a cleaned status. We're going to have a whatever it was. So you can sort of start to see now. Let me just pull this across into this side. The types of information and data that are going to have to be available within this. So when you're doing up a requirement spec, you can start to go, we need these statuses to be captured because there's a reason for having them, right? And there's going to be, associated user stories, all that sort of stuff. Now, if you're building in a big, bulky ERP system, you may be working with the likes of, a dedicated business analyst or a solution architect or, development team, that sort of stuff, who will take care of the data structure for you. But I think it's really helpful to understand how data structures work. I feel like I became a much better analyst when I understood how data structures and databases work in terms of how they interact with each other. So definitely, if you don't have any skills in that area, I would definitely highly recommend at least looking into that. So, within this process, now we're capturing this different information. Repair or replace. You might have this as a choice. You might have it as, the choices might be keep, repair, replace, or reuse. Something like that. Clean, prepared. So cleaned, prepared will be another one. This might be a Boolean or a choice, depending on how you want it to display. Verified. And what this does, it allows us to have a very clear view on how things will come together. Document update date. To know when it last happened. And then return to storage. So return to storage, interesting one. You know, you might go, you might have a location field or something where you look up to a location. And, you know, separately, you might have a separate table then for managing your storage locations. And then this would look up to that location so you can see where it's stored, or you'd be able to look at a specific location and see the components that are stored in that area. So yeah, super easy, right? Like once you know what the process is doing, you're able to really craft a good picture around the types of data and information you're going to need to be managing throughout the process. You know, I could take this now and I could go into the likes of Rapid Platform and I could set up databases to do this, to manage components super easily, right? I could do this within 5 minutes. I could have an active database set up and starting to capture information for that. So yeah. Then we've got cleaning, polishing. So I'll go back out to my other table here. So that's our maintenance process, right? So again, this might go out to replace, and this, you know, might be repaired. So different things, different outcomes to think about there. You know, obviously, this is not really telling you, you know, that it needs to have multiple outputs or multiple paths. I've just asked it for some more detailed steps. You do need to use your brain a little bit, right? Don't let this do all the work for you. Have a think about what are the potential outcomes of each of the steps. Okay, so then we have cleaning. So cleaning the train body. Pull this down here. We've got specialized polishing. So, you know, I'll just call this polish surfaces or polish aerodynamic surfaces, depending on if there's other surfaces you need to worry about. Here, there are multiple surfaces. So this is one of those circumstances where when you're using the verb noun format, you need to add an adjective. So you can differentiate the different types. Okay. The main example I usually use is risks. You know, you have project risk, business risk. How you manage different risks may differ, so it helps to differentiate them on the model. Otherwise, it gets confusing because you know many people within the business understand that there's multiple types of risks, and then they go, "Well, which risk are we talking about here again? I don't know. It doesn't say on the thing. It's just a general term." Try to be as specific as possible. The purpose of doing this, remember, is partly a communication tool. It is this is how this process works. And we need to be specific because people will look at it and then ask questions. How do we reduce the number of questions that we get on our models? By providing the right information in the right format. That is how. Then we have reassembly. So we'll just really quickly run through the cleaning, you know, cleaning the train body, polishing the aerodynamic surfaces, standard polishing for other carriage. So we've got sidewalls, roofs, things like that. We have a painting process, which is robotic. You know, again, you might not include this if you're only dealing with business process. You know, business process doesn't typically deal with the automation side of things, but you may want to make some notes around what you're doing in that space. A lot of systems these days, BPMN, even Liberty Spark now use or have a automated or a system type shape that you can use, or you know, notation that you can put on there. It just really depends on why you're modeling the process in the first place, right? Drying, curing, okay, and then quality check of the finished paint job. You know, so again, this has given me a linear process. What if the quality check fails? what are the types of things there that we would need to think about doing? Is it a touch-up job? Is it a complete rework? Is it all of those types of things? There are different outcomes there where the process might loop back to one of the earlier stages, or there might be a new process that kicks off to deal with those defects. So again, something to think about here. There might be multiple outcomes of what you need to do. You can point it down that way. We have cleaning operators, polishing specialists, painting operators, quality inspectors. All those people will be labeled up on the tasks here. And then we have reassembly. So we'll head back in here, reassembly. There's 7 steps on this one. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. As much as you can, learn the shortcut keys because it really does help with productivity. Oops, I did not want to do that. Preliminary functional tests. And then documentation of reassembly completion. Okay, so now we're seeing it all come back together, aren't we? We are seeing, because at the start we had our train broken down into carriages, broken down into components. Now the components are being assembled back into the carriages, and the carriages are being reattached to the train. Okay, so you're dealing with different things. So again, going back to your database structures, you might have a separate table for the trains, and you will have the carriages that look at that train to be attached to that train, that sort of stuff. So you can have full traceability about how it's all broken down and how it all comes back together again. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so there's that one, and then there's the final one. So we'll save this. We'll go back out. Final testing. So automated test runs. It's pretty cool that they can do that. Manual inspections. I think I need a more powerful computer. This is getting a little ridiculous. And then track tests. Track tests, analysis of the test data. Again, it's whenever analysis is there, analysis or checks or anything like that, there are going to be multiple outcomes. It's never always going to go through, because if it's always going to go through, there's no point doing it in the first place. They do that analysis for a reason. Why is that? Well, it's to verify compliance and performance and safety standards. So if it doesn't meet those standards, you need to do something. So again, it's you have multiple outcomes here that you're going to need to go back and do. Where does it go? What happens? Who does it? How do they know? Is it a system thing? How is it communicated? All of that sort of stuff needs to be done, right? So yeah. So that's basically that's how I research some processes that that I'm interested in. If you're working in the finance sector or insurance or something like that, or you're starting out in a new industry, process and having a process way of thinking is, really beneficial to understanding how things work. Um, you know, remember, you can look up, there's a YouTube video for basically anything these days. So, head into YouTube, look up how whatever you want to figure out is made or works or things like that. And then use ChatGPT to help you think through the different things that might go into that. So you can ask really good questions if you go into a workshop, things like that. Um, it really does help to show your stakeholders that you're able to ask good questions. And even though I'm known to ask some pretty stupid questions sometimes, um, this helps us be more targeted in terms of like understanding the problems that a particular process might be having. So you might discover something in here where you go, oh, okay, well, that wasn't discussed in this particular workshop. Maybe that's a verification question I can go back and ask. Oh, I see that, within the industry, some other places do this. Do we do that? And, your stakeholder might say something like, oh, yeah, we do that. We do it at this stage of the process, and it's something you can go back and update and go from there. Or, no, but that's a good idea. We should explore how we actually do that. In which case, you can make some notes there and put it into your idea database to explore further. So, yeah, definitely really something to think about there. I'm going to finish up there. Really appreciate you joining me today. If you have any feedback about the content or you want me to go a little bit deeper with this stuff, I would love to hear from you. You can sign up for my email newsletter, processnerd.io. And yeah, I would love to be able to communicate with you more through that. Through there, I give really, really actionable tips to how to do process management really well. And yeah, if you've got any questions or feedback, you can email me input@processnerd.io and we can sort of go from there. But yeah, really appreciate you joining me today, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.